Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the STC Podcast. That's the Standards and Training Committee of the National Council on Interpreting in Healthcare. We bring these to you every month as you get to meet leaders from all aspects of language access. People who work as interpreters and translators, people who supervise interpreters and translators, people who sell language access services, people who train language access services, and people who use language access services. So today, I'm really excited to bring to you someone very special, someone who has been working as a language access champion for a very long time, almost as long as me. So our guest today is Giovanna Lester, Gio to most of you, and her career in translating and interpreting started in 1980. Gio has occupied various administrative positions in a number of professional associations, and I'll just name a few. President of the Brazilian Association of Translators and Interpreters, ABRATES, right? Associação Brasileira de Tradutores e Intérpretes, and co-chair of NAJIT's Social Media Committee, editor of the NAJIT Observer, assistant administrator and administrator of the ATA Interpreters Division, and the interim vice chair and director of the National Board of Certification for Medical Interpreters. Gia has been published in the ATA Chronicle, the ATA's The Savvy Newcomer, the NAJIT Observer, and Proteus, CIOL, The Linguist, the CMI Times, and ABRATES Metafrase, to cite a few publications. And you can also find her articles on LinkedIn. She's a very active member on LinkedIn. Gio has created and resurrected a number of newsletters. She is a speaker, a mentor, a writer, and a member of Toastmasters International West Kendall Club, where she has been vice president of membership and is the current vice president of education and vice president of public relations for the 2023-2024 period. My gosh, you need a coat tree for all those hats. Gio, seja bem-vinda. Welcome. So happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
So, as you know, this is a podcast that looks at language access, the good, the bad, the ugly, and hopefully the things that we can do to help make it better. So let's start out looking back towards the beginning. And when you look back the 80s and the 90s, what are you most proud of? What stands out to you?
Oh, the internet. The advent of the internet. It threw everyone into a tailspin. Personally and also in professional terms. All of a sudden, our competition was worldwide. It was no longer that group of people we knew, the market we were familiar with. All of a sudden, we had to deal with people cutting our rates. I recall speaking to a gentleman who told me he could not pay my rate, and this is the 80s. So we were charging very little. Some were in double digits, but most people were in single digits.
Mm-hmm.
And he's telling me he made more money sending his stuff down to be translated out of the country and then having it prized over here and published here. So with that type of power, the internet really created a lot of difficulties until it all settled down. Then it became a great ally. I don't think I would be able to do the level of work I do now without having the internet so available to me. I can do all my research. I can talk to people on the other side of the world to clarify an idea that I have done. I contacted doctors in Bahia, Brazil, to discuss the details of brain surgery, to work on a translation I was doing. Terminology. And for my interpreting work, all the research we have to do. For example, when we don't receive material, you know that, you're familiar with it, I know. We don't receive material from the client. We go on the internet and we do research. We find videos so that we can listen to language voices, speed, and what we call in Portuguese trejeitos, the mannerisms of the speaker, so that we can prepare ourselves better, as well as learning more about the subject. So
That's really interesting that
yeah,
you bring the internet up initially as a daunting challenge that has now transformed into an incredibly versatile technological assistance, aid, secretary, library, dictionary, glossary, instant availability of verification of facts, which for nerds is just the most wonderful thing in the world. But I really like remembering that it was not viewed as a good thing when it first happened, because we go through these cycles, right? Whether it's the advent of internet access, figuring out what is a good resource, what is a bad resource, what's reliable. And then the advent of remote interpreting, talking to each other like we're doing now, that was also seen as, oh, it's going to be bad for patients. And then working out how to do it, developing those guardrails of when and how to do this well. And currently now with AI and ChatGPT, it's the same red flags that go up. Oh, ChatGPT is going to take away our jobs, just like remote interpreting is going to take our jobs, just like internet access is going to take our jobs. I think we really need to jump in and be part of the discussion of how can we use this new technology well, right? Rather than have people come to the interpreter at the end or the translator at the end when things have gone wrong. It's nicer, I think, for us to strive to be included earlier in the discussions rather than after complaints are filed. So I think that's a good lesson for all of us to remember. All of these innovations were viewed skeptically at first, or fearfully, which is worse, because then you're not open to what could work, right?
yes. People keep forgetting that there are two constants in the world: change and death. That's it.
Yep.
Things will always change. There is nothing you can do about that. I was listening to somebody the other day telling someone, you can only control your reaction to things.
Not everybody else, as much as many people try.
Exactly. Exactly. So absorb, embrace the fact that change is a constant, and deal with your mental shortcomings, but internally, outwardly, you should convey a concept of embracing, of understanding, not necessarily accepting. There's a difference there. But, it's like talking to somebody who has a different opinion of you, from yours, I should say. You can always talk with that person. You don't have to fight. Doesn't have to be a conflict. Right now, I'm living through that. We spoke briefly about the move I just made in my life, my big change. And it was not something I was very receptive to.
Mm.
But guess what? Look at me. Do I look frazzled? Do I look upset? No.
Ever, Gio.
I went through all of that internally, and here I am. I came out of that.
Keep calm and call the professional interpreter or translator.
Yes.
But also very important to do what you just said, which is to be ready for change and to be open to exploring how to best incorporate this new thing, technology, change, a system, into your work, into your profession. And we need more of that so that we waste less time, right?
Mhm.
Time is precious when new things are introduced, because if we don't have a discussion on how to do it well, people are still going to start using it anyway. And then
Yeah.
when it's
Yeah.
ad hoc, I guess is the diplomatic way of saying it, it can go anywhere, right? And that's not what we want. So this leads me right to the second question, which is currently, what do you see as the biggest challenge? And it could be as narrow as the biggest challenge to your workday, or all the way to the biggest challenge for language access. Right now, in this moment, what is your biggest challenge?
Oh, I believe that the whole world is like a mosaic, and there's so many different pieces to it. I see which one I'm going to pick here. I think the biggest challenge is still communication. And by that, I mean, there are so many different initiatives to digitizing languages. We are now in the decade of indigenous languages, the original languages. And there's so much effort going towards digitizing them so that we can grant language access to those people who also need us, not necessarily all of our technology, but we shouldn't let their history die, their culture die. We should be able to accommodate them in our reality. Plus, there are services we offer that need to be part of their reality too, like healthcare. We had a huge problem with COVID in Brazil because there was no access to the vaccine in the Amazon, for example. And there are a different number of original peoples living that we need to, help. And that's a reality all over the world. So being able to bring those communities into our world, our reality, is very important. It's a big change. We need, we talked a little bit about remote interpreting. It was such a breakthrough when you think in terms of medical access. Without an interpreter, that is very restricted to, in the US, English-speaking people. That's it. And being able to access an interpreter remotely, be it sign language or a Hmong interpreter, Portuguese, whatever language, remotely, and bring that assistance, that access, grant that access to the patient and to the doctor, is incredible. So the work we are doing now with languages, recognition of the value of languages, is something that gives me goosebumps. I love that.
Gotta keep those languages of limited diffusion, or rarer languages, or indigenous languages, the ones that remain alive. There's been a lot of efforts here in the Pacific Northwest at different community colleges that were really creative, like starting a radio station at one of the community colleges in Salish, which is a Pacific Northwest indigenous language. And then out of that, creating summer camps for kids on vacation from school to learn the language, integrated with traditional fishing, hunting, gathering kinds of things to learn about their culture, really took off because it was fun. And the radio station was a great way to give information about where to get your immunizations, but in Salish, across generations. So I think there are more out of the box ideas needed, because beyond the spoken language differences of culture, as well as sign language differences, there's also another culture that people need to learn about, and that's the American, the USA healthcare systems culture, which is not like anyone else's. It's not. It's a whole glossary for insurance and coverages and finance. And so all of these worlds need to be able to talk to each other better, communicate better. And yes,
Over
as
the
you
last
said, video helped make it better, but we're not there yet. It's
we
an
are not there yet.
ongoing journey.
Yeah, you mentioned the language of lesser diffusion, and that took me back to the work the coalition, the National Coalition for Language Certification. I do not remember if that is the correct number, but um, no, I think it was National Coalition for Certification of Language. I don't know if you remember. It's something that started in 2007. And Elizabeth Wayne, I believe that's how her name is pronounced, was a staunch advocate for languages of lesser diffusion. That was something at the time was not even on my radar until she brought that language onto me. Languages of lesser diffusion, that term, it completely opened up a world of differences for me. And the work she did was really great. I am glad that we have two entities now offering certification and that we are going forward with the certification for medical interpreters. Very needed. I respect the work that's been done. Great. And I just have to recognize that it's not only original languages, but these other languages that are in our world here, the US in our case, that are more prevalent in one community or another. They really, really need to be recognized and given space. And the discussion was mostly with regards to the certification because of the differences in level of education and knowledge. Two different things, education and knowledge. So yeah, her work was really good in that area.
So I think the remote interpreting has helped close the gap of accessing languages that may not be as common in your particular region, but that you can still access a way to communicate for that language. But I think we really need to do a better job supporting rarer language speakers, heritage language speakers, LLD language speakers in the training and certification process, whether it's scholarships or partnering with the state for whoever is in charge of immigrant refugee relocation services, to have that be part of the package, because a lot of people do have tremendous potential to be wonderful interpreters, but like everybody else, they need the training. And one cancels out the other if you're in a subsistence state, just making it as opposed to succeeding. And we could really help. There's an organization, I believe it's called Upwardly Global, that helps partner with recent refugees and immigrants to go over their education and work experience and find partners to pay for the training to make it legal for them to be an EMT here or a nurse here or a dental assistant here or whatever it was that they were in their country of origin. You know, there are fees, not just interpreters have certification fees, but also in allied healthcare profession certification and licensure, right? Get them over that so they can start earning some money. We need to do something like that, I think, for interpreters, which brings me to question number 3, which is looking forward. I just told you what I would like to see happen. What would you love to see happen in this world of ours of language access and communication?
Oh my, world peace.
Well, it's not Miss Universe pageant, Gio, although I'm sure you would place highly.
Yeah, really. World peace would be great. And I believe that language professionals, all of us at every level, from language teachers to interpreters in medical settings, in diplomatic settings, we are all part of it, a very large part of it, because without communication, we cannot grow. Without communication, we cannot understand our different points of view and react to the reality of the facts rather than to our emotions and our cultural biases. So, yes, I believe that a greater diffusion of the work that language professionals do would have a great impact in allowing different cultures to react more positively to one another, would also assist us all in achieving that great peace dream. But as far as technology is concerned, I see the work that some companies, language service providers are doing, especially in the area of interpreting using AI. I was very shocked the first time I heard on interpreting the edition by AI. It's not available in every language. Yes, it makes mistakes, but there is a lot of accuracy present in the work that is being done. And from what I understand, it is to be used in very specific and situations. And this is something everyone should pay attention to.
This is an example of where, if interpreters were involved at the launch, at the beginning, there could be good feedback given. Standard messages, how to get your refill, directions, where do I park, where do I find this clinic, wayfinding, all of that stuff could be generated beautifully by AI. I don't know if you saw or heard of Vanessa Costa's presentation on AI use at Paving the Way this year in Massachusetts. And apparently, their process is the smart way. They have all AI generated generic, not patient specific messages vetted by both a provider and one of their lead interpreters for that language. And if it passes muster in terms of accuracy of the information and accuracy of the way it was expressed in that language, then it goes into the archive. And when patients are polled, they like the AI messages more. They come across as warmer and friendlier, and they understand them. So that to me was like, boom, really eye-opening. The patients like the AI more. So if we can have guardrails that we make sure the AI isn't going off into its own dimension and making something up, patient satisfaction. I can see a lot of places in the hospital, for example, we have never, ever, in my experience, had time to assign an interpreter to an inpatient to explain menu choices. They're never not that busy.
Yeah.
But all the menu choices or descriptions of what goes into the dish or how many calories it has or how you say the names of all the ingredients in the other language could be a tedious job, I grant you, but could be loaded into an AI, sort of like talk to you. You press on the menu, what language do you want? And it'll explain to you, this is fish with rice and these vegetables and prepared with this kind of oil and in that patient's language. And I know all the inpatients who are limited in English and not used to American diets, if they eat more culturally based at home, would love this, because a lot of times it's just like if you had been given a menu all in Chinese, it's just like pick something, number 7 and number 12. I have no idea what's coming. So that would be a big benefit, I think. We could use it in a lot of places that would be perfectly safe while we have the discussion to how do we handle this when it's direct communication with a specific patient. But instead, stuff is being rolled out in all kinds of directions with little consultation with people that do this for a living. And that is worrisome because inevitably, I think there will be bumps in the road. So
I have been a witness to some of what's going on from the point of view of those outside of our profession. They have the need for the translation for the
Fast,
voice.
fast, fast.
Exactly. So they go to a company that can provide that. And those companies I've received them, send us lines for us to interpret or lists of words for us to, read into a microphone without taking into consideration context. It's all in a vacuum, and it doesn't work that way. And those companies do not work with interpreting. They are studios. They're recording you, and that's it.
That's it.
So it's totally out of context, and it cannot bring a good result. And from the point of view of the professional, the language professional, the reactions I have seen from my colleagues is, why am I going to do that? You're training a machine to take my job. So that is the point of view. And for colleagues to say, oh man, I just did this job and it's so easy and it's so much fun. And those people are attacked. Why are you doing that? You're a traitor. You shouldn't do this. This needs to be changed. This mindset needs to be changed.
Yeah, fear is never a good negotiating position. So there needs better communication for the fear to ramp down so that then people can open and figure out, well, where can this work? How should we do it? What are the limitations? When should we never do this? Right? Same thing when I train providers on how to partner with interpreters, and I tell them about trying to make an effort. If they're going to deliver bad news, you have stage 4 X type cancer, or the negative prognosis is how they say it. But if you have a negative prognosis, don't use a phone interpreter. Think back when you were in high school or college. Did you appreciate it when your boyfriend or girlfriend broke up with you on the phone? Or would you have appreciated a little bit more their being willing to stand in front of you and state the case, right? It just seems like a cheap way out to use the phone. So don't do it when you're working with a patient and it's really serious or bad news that you need to share. Try to have that interpreter there. There's going to be questions. People are going to be upset. And I know that North American culture is less comfortable with overt expressions of dismay or grief, but you can do it.
That can be done. Yeah, and also we understand there are situations when that cannot be avoided. But I believe that bringing someone else into the room that can show empathy, like there should be a social worker in the hospital that could be there to assist in being a buffer. There are things that can be done when the only option is using the telephone. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And so just like we've had all these discussions, just because it's better to be in-person interpreter scheduling when you're delivering bad news, it doesn't mean that using the phone to communicate with someone is bad. You're just choosing the most appropriate modality for the situation. And sometimes, whether it's post-disaster or areas that are in war zones or in violent situations, all you have is the phone. So you need to think about all the eventualities and plan for them. And that's, I think, if we have interpreters and translators earlier at the table, the AI discussion could be way less scary than what some of what is being reported is right now. We have like one state saying all of their 911 calls are going to go to AI interpretation. And then you have New York State coming out and saying, nope, no AI interpretation for healthcare or emergency response, and making a law about it. And you've got everybody in between. So I think for the future, rather than being afraid, we have to be involved. We have to find groups to lend a voice to.
Absolutely. Abraham Lincoln has a sentence, a phrase that I like very much. The way to predict the future is to create it.
Very nice. He was an incredible writer.
Yes. And I believe that. I believe in that wholeheartedly. It took me a while to put words to what I felt and knew and my actions from the very beginning. But for example, when I a long time ago, when was it? 2017, a long time ago, 2017, I held an event and I started working on it in 2016 with some two friends of mine in Brazil. And the idea was to create an event that was virtual for translators and interpreters all around the world. And the idea was to use Zoom and do that. And that was before Zoom had the interpreting capability. And I found out about remote interpreting. So I contacted two companies and we offered the service, the event with those services. Remote interpreting was part of the event. And it was great. Then the pandemic hit and it became the norm. But the fight I had to get that to become the norm, was incredible. But the one thing I wanted, and it worked, was to bring the concept of remote interpreting, new technology, change in the profession to a few professionals, and they did embrace it. And they are now remote interpreters trained in different platforms, including sign language interpreting.
Yep.
And I feel very good about feeling the way I feel about it, because as you said, as we agreed here, until we accept technology as a reality, as a change, a definite change, and something we need to be part of, either as programmers or giving input, helping set those guardrails, the standards. There are different ways for us to engage with that technology rather than shove it to the side, ignore it, and become obsolete. And then you go and complain, technology replaced me. No, you allowed that to happen by not accepting your responsibility in your future, in creating your own future. That's what we're here to do. Every second, every time, every step, that's something you have to do. Be aware of where you stand, the changes around you, how you react to them, how you accept them or not. But you got to take responsibility.
The one silver lining of the pandemic is that all of those clinics and hospitals that were resisting video remote interpreting mightily up until the pandemic hit got dragged right into the middle of having to utilize those services overnight. And of course, all the places like the place I used to work, Harborview Medical Center, that's had a video remote interpreting since 2008, benefited from having solid systems and mentoring programs and training in place, and were able to adapt to telehealth overnight, whereas other systems really struggled and were doing things that were not HIPAA compliant, using mobile phone apps and things because they did not have a system in place yet. But everybody's there now, and and a lot of those fears or those tendencies to micromanage were proven to be false or not needed, because productivity in terms of telehealth is shot way up. So I think maybe the message from today is change is inevitable. New technologies are always going to be developed, and you can stand back and be negative, or you could jump in and participate so that we waste less time with bad protocols and try to implement good protocols right from the beginning. And That's exciting. It's nice to meet other people in the language access world from different points of view. Like you said, the programmers, right? It's only as good as the information you put in. And so they need input on what needs to be included. And the people who sell the services and the people who buy the services are not normally folks that I interact with day in, day out, but we all need to be having this discussion as a group for them to understand how quality communication leads to better healthcare outcomes, shorter length of stay, fewer readmission rates, all of the things linked to interpreter use are linked to good communication, right? Medication compliance, all of that.
I worked at a bank in another life. And I remember we had a consultant come in, and she sat with each one of us and asked us, what do you do and how do you do it? I need to see exactly step by step what you do. Some people reacted to that negatively. It's like, why? Somebody's going to take my job. You're going to teach people how to do my job, etc. However, I was observing everything she was doing. And I could see that she was comparing people who worked in departments that whose job, the output of that department affected the work of another department, and how they could work together. That's what she was doing. She was analyzing processes in Department A to see how it matched with processes in Department B, how duplication could be avoided, how it could be expedited, etc., etc. Now, people in Department A didn't necessarily understand the processes that went on in Department B. How does that apply to us? Language service providers don't necessarily have the same background we do. They don't understand the processes we go through. And if we don't speak up, if we don't have entities like professional associations to protect us, the standards to protect us, it is so easy to take advantage of us and create problems. And people don't understand that. I talk a lot about educating our clients. I don't mean sit them down, go to the blackboard and write down what you do. No, there's so many other different ways of sharing what you do and how you do it with your clients. But in my mind, all that's called education. Okay? For me, that's my term, my word. Some people don't like it. But that's how I refer to it. It becomes necessary. Somebody asks you to do a job for 8 hours. You are the one who's going to tell them you can't do it. You need a partner. If a client doesn't give you the information you need to work with, I've heard, oh, but all you're going to do is repeat what they say. And yeah, I'm sorry. Yes. But input, when you're talking about technology, has a completely different meaning from when you say input in agribusiness. It's the same word, but in my language, they are different words. Which one am I going to use in my language? It's not your language I'm worried about. It's my language, the one I'm working into. So I have to tell people how I do my job, what I need, so that they can deliver that to me and make it a little easier, so they can understand what it is that I cannot do for them and use better what I can. So yes, that's a dialogue that's very much needed in all of the areas of our
Yeah. I think it's boiling down to, yes, education, but participation, right? So that we can set up processes that are efficient and lead to better outcomes. We don't want unforeseen things going off the rails when you're talking about someone's health or someone's sentence at the end of a guilty verdict.
Yeah.
Everything needs to be very clear in that communication. But also that education leads to certification, right? It's all like a big circle. But the big one that I want to stress for anyone listening to this podcast today is participation. Grassroots participation, whether it's school board or city council or local groups that are professional interpreter, translator groups. Ask your local group, what are we hearing locally about remote interpreting, about AI use in interpreting or translated messages? And let your voice be heard. Get to know the people who are making these decisions. It's not just congressmen. They receive a packet that a group of people put together. Find out who that group of people is where you live. It's not that hard to get your voice heard, but you have to make that first effort. It's not going to come and sit on your lap and ask your opinion.
That is the one thing that bothers me the most, the apathy and expecting the results to come to you. It doesn't work that way. You need to make your voice heard. It does not mean you have to go to the top of the mountain and scream from there. No. Participate in a group, give them more support. Your voice will be reflected in the outcome of their work, and that will be good. My husband was asking me yesterday why I enjoyed so much participating in different groups. And I told him, and it's funny because until then I had not really verbalized it. My voice is easy to be muffled. But when I am part of a group and everybody says the same thing, that voice becomes louder. It has power. It changes things. It can be done. So do your time a little bit, because it's just like the construction. Your tile, your brick, and the other one, and the other one, and the other one creates a reality. You have to become part of it.
I love that message. Everybody out there, listen to this message, and then tell a friend and ask them to tell a friend. This is how the chain starts, people. Google, another technological innovation, can be your friend here. You can look up the name of your local representative, your city council member, your school board member, your senator, your congressman, as well as professional associations in your area. If this is something that concerns you, don't be afraid. Participate. Participate.
And there is the Safe AI initiative.
Yep.
It is something everyone should really look into. Anyone who is
right now, they're trying to constitute the group that will be the group to help create these guardrails, these standards. So the first group is not official in any way other than to say, hey, let's put a group together.
Yeah, but it is already organized with Catherine Allen, Winnie A. It's going. They actually
going, and they definitely want, I'm part of that group too. We definitely want folks who want to be part of this discussion to let us know. So I will post later today on Facebook and LinkedIn where you can participate in that Safe AI initiative. And I thank you so much. Muito obrigada, Giovanna, for taking the time to share some of your thoughts with us and get our membership and the people that listen to this podcast energized to go out there and participate.
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Muito obrigada, minha querida.
Beijo. Ciao.
Ciao.